Most of us think we've got the creation story in Genesis 1 down pat. But what if we've been asking the wrong questions about it this whole time? We're going to take a look at a different way to read this ancient text, a way that looks past the how to find a much, much deeper message about the why.
So that brings us to this one, critical question. For centuries, the big debate has been all about how God created everything. But what if the text itself is pointing us in a totally different direction? What if the real point isn't about the mechanics of creation at all, but about the why, the purpose behind it all, and what it tells us about who God really is? Okay, so the first thing we got to do is shift our perspective. We need to stop seeing Genesis 1 as some kind of modern science textbook. It's not. It's something way more profound. It's a foundational story designed to reveal God's character and his ultimate plan for the world.
And here's really the key difference. Think of it this way. The how question, that's the one that pulls us into scientific debates. But the why question, that leads us straight into theology. It's an invitation to understand God's heart, his intentions, and the incredible pattern he sets up from the very first verse.
All right, so here's where it gets really interesting. The story doesn't begin with a perfect, pristine, finished universe. Nope. Instead, the text drops us right into a surprisingly messy and, well, chaotic starting point.
So what was the raw material God actually started with? We usually picture a perfect world just popping into existence, right? But the text itself, it paints a very, very different scene.
I mean, just look at these words used to describe the early earth. Formless, void, darkness, chaotic waters. These are words of disorder, emptiness, non-existence. This is not the perfect beginning you might expect. The story is showing us an explicitly unfinished, imperfect world right from the jump.
And that just begs the question, doesn't it? A perfect God could have just spoken a perfect world into being in a single instant. So why start like this? This messy start is our first huge clue that God is trying to show us something really important about how he works.
There's this brilliant analogy for this. If someone just hands you a beautifully finished cake, you appreciate it, sure, but you don't really learn much. But if they invite you into the kitchen, you see the ingredients, the mess, the mixing, the baking, you understand the whole process. By starting with chaos, God is basically inviting us into his kitchen to see exactly how he operates. So right from the very beginning, God is revealing his core nature. He is a God who specializes in taking what is empty, dark, and chaotic and bringing purpose, order, and beauty to it. And that's not just a story about the cosmos, it's a huge statement about who God is.
But it doesn't stop there. This theme just keeps building as we look closer at the 6 days of creation. They're not just a random to-do list. They are woven together with these incredible literary and theological patterns that just make the whole story so much deeper.
Check out the first pattern. It's in the rhythm of each day. The text says over and over, there was evening and there was morning. Why evening first? Well, in God's economy, things often start in darkness. It's a picture of sleep or even death. And then he brings us into the morning light. That's a picture of new beginnings, of resurrection. He's a God of resurrection every single day.
Now, get ready for this because this is just an incredible literary structure. The first 3 days are all about forming different realms. You've got light, then sky and seas, and then dry land. Okay, simple enough. But then, watch how the next 3 days perfectly fill those exact realms. On day 4, God fills the realm of light from day 1 with the sun, moon, and stars. On day 5, he fills the sky and seas from day 2 with birds and fish. And on day 6, he fills the dry land from day 3 with animals and finally humanity. This is no accident. It's divine, purposeful, brilliant design. But wait, it gets even deeper. There's what you could call a gospel pattern baked right into these first 3 days. On day 1, God overcomes darkness. On day 2, he overcomes the chaotic waters, which in the ancient world was a symbol of judgment. And then, what happens on the morning of the 3rd day? Life emerges from the ground. Think about that. Overcoming darkness and death with new life on the 3rd day. That's the gospel story, right there, embedded in the very fabric of creation.
So this all builds to the grand finale of the creation week. And just when we think we've got all the patterns figured out, God does something completely unexpected, something that forces all of our attention onto the creation of humanity.
So as the story moves along, a specific phrase gets repeated again and again and again, 10 times in total, according to their kinds. For every plant, for every animal, the listener hears this same rhythm. Imagine hearing this story told aloud.
That phrase will be hammered into your brain. This constant repetition, it builds this powerful rhythm, this sense of expectation. You know it's coming. So when we finally get to the creation of humans, you're leaning in, you're expecting to hear that same familiar phrase one more time, right?
But then, bam, the pattern shatters. In this incredible plot twist, God doesn't say, according to their kind. He says, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. The break in the pattern is completely intentional, and it forces us to stop and ask, wait, what does that mean?
And the implication here is just profound. Instead of being made according to their kind, like all the animals, humanity is made according to God's kind. This sets us completely apart for a unique purpose, to be in relationship with our Creator, to reflect His relational, creative, moral nature in a way nothing else in all of creation can.
Okay, so let's tie all these threads together. You've got the messy beginning, the hidden literary patterns, and the stunning climax of humanity's creation. They all point to one incredibly powerful message, what we can call creation's gospel.
So what does this first chapter really show us about God? It's this rich, beautiful portrait. He isn't some distant clockmaker God. He's a God of resurrection. He's a God who dives into chaos and brings order. He speaks light into darkness. He fills the void with purpose. This is his signature move, and it has been from the very beginning of the story.
And here really is the ultimate takeaway. That pattern of cosmic creation, it's the exact same pattern of personal salvation. For anyone out there whose life feels dark or empty or chaotic, Genesis 1 gives us the blueprint. The Spirit moves, the Word is spoken, and light emerges. The creation of the entire universe becomes a model for our own new creation.
So we'll end with this thought to chew on. If God's fundamental nature, His MO, is to step into messy, chaotic situations and bring forth purpose, order, and incredible beauty, what does that mean for the chaos in our own lives? For the darkness, for the emptiness we all face? Well, the story of creation seems to suggest that those places aren't dead ends. In fact, they might just be the very raw material God loves to work with.